And I'm saying like, oh, well, we want a two-state solution, right? And he said, absolutely not. One state, Palestine. Hurting civilians is wrong, right? And he said, there is no such thing as an Israeli civilian. They are all valid targets. Okay, but suicide bombing is obviously wrong. And he looked at me without skipping a beat. He says, Habibi, this is all we have. I didn't want to refuse because up until that point, I didn't have a collective that I belonged to. You trick yourself into thinking, well, they don't mean it. They'll moderate, it's not really like that. You West-blame yourself. They don't moderate. You actually end up becoming more extreme.
They don't change their goals, but they get you to change who you are slowly over time.
I remember when October 7th happened. And it pains me to say this, but my reaction to it was that it was a good thing. Knowing that Israelis died, knowing that Israelis suffered is a good thing. I had a choice. I could either accept that and withdraw myself from that cause, or I would do what I had done before in the past, which is I am going to deny, deflect, or what happens. Just remember, I'm looking at these posters with the hostages, and all I can think about is how I saw videos of somebody defacing posters of the hostages. And I really had this moment, and it felt like it lasted an eternity. But I had this moment where I said to myself, you might be a piece of shit, but you're not such a piece of shit that you would ever do something like this.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Yasmine Mohammed podcast. Today, my guest is a man named Michael. Michael is a man that I met on Instagram, and I was immediately sending him a message saying, please come on my podcast. You are such an interesting person. You've got such an interesting story. And I know that you're all going to be just as enthralled with Michael's story as I was. So Michael grew up Coptic Christian, and then he converted to Islam for a very specific reason. It's because he hated Jews so much, and Islam offered him a place where he could do that very comfortably. He was born in the US to a Coptic Orthodox family, but he drifted in and out of, being agnostic for many years. And he sympathized and advocated with the Palestinians until he found that he had to choose between his humanity and his continuing support for a cause that he increasingly saw as morally bankrupt and depraved. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And that's when he started creating content that actually focused on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And after nearly 20 years of supporting this cause, he says that he would have gladly murdered every Israeli. Michael believes he owes it to the Jewish community to tell his story and to share his knowledge, to fight the propaganda machine, and hopefully pull people out of the Free Palestine death cult. Leaning heavily into books and recollections of history for information, Michael tries to raise awareness about the problems with the Palestinian leadership, to uplift and showcase Jewish voices and opinions, and to defend Zionism to a world that has a very poor understanding of what Zionism is. So, wow. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Yasmine.
So you really have been on every extreme. And now it sounds like you're kind of finally settled somewhere in the middle where you can see things objectively from what's going on in all of the different extreme places. So you call the pro-Palestinians as being part of a death cult. So I really want to get back to that because I think that there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had around that. But before we get there, I want to talk to you about your Coptic Orthodox identity, because I've had a couple of Coptic Christians, Coptic Egyptians on this podcast, but I really feel that you're a group that we don't hear from enough. We don't know enough about. So you specifically growing up in the US as a Coptic Orthodox Egyptian, how did you find these identities conflicted or intersected. So, what are the stories? What are some stories, some little anecdotes that you can share with us to tell us what was it like growing up as a Coptic Christian Orthodox in America?
Lousy. I really mean it too. Um, I grew up about an hour away from the nearest Orthodox church in Massachusetts. So on Sunday, I would have to wake up at like 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. to go to Coptic church. And this is on top of going to a Catholic school Monday through Friday. And because most Coptic people tend to live nearby where the church is, I didn't really grow up around them. Like they grew up around one another. And so that was sort of like Coptic to me never felt like an identity. It just
Mhm.
felt like, okay, that was church. That's all it meant to me. Um, and I always say I grew up Egyptian Arab far more than I grew up Coptic Egyptian.
Okay.
And I'll give you a comparison. There are some Coptic people who, if they're driving in the car, they will listen to Coptic hymns because they have such a resentment towards Arabic being a product of, Islam, the Islamic conquest of Egypt, that they reject anything and everything that has to do with Arabic.
Mhm.
And then you have my parents who grew up in the big cities, Cairo and Alexandria. And my father, his family came from a military background in Egypt. And my mom, she grew up just a regular, like any other Egyptian would in Alexandria. So my parents didn't have, they also didn't have like the strongest Coptic identity because they were, cosmopolitan people. And so I grew up with Arabic singers, Abdul Halim, Farid al-Atrash, Kulthum, that was a very strong part of my upbringing. I remember, we didn't have cable, but they had the money for satellite television so they could watch the Arabic channels.
Yeah.
So I grew up, but I also didn't have much of an Arab identity. I just knew that I was Egyptian and that was it. And being in America, my parents wanted me, it was sort of a contradictory effort because they wanted me to really be American. But at the same time, it's like our house was the Egyptian embassy and everything that went on in our house was Egypt and everything outside of that was America. And as much as they wanted me to be American, at the same time, I would experience pushback from actual Americans, particularly after 9/11. And it was after 9/11 when I was first told, you're Arab. Like I didn't like I grew up very naive about the Middle East. Like I knew what Egypt was. I knew about Egypt, but I was very naive about the Middle East in general. I didn't realize that there was this whole broader Arab world that Egypt was connected to.
Did you realize that you
Um,
weren't actually Arab at all?
Uh, Years and years later, when my mom's Lebanese friends like told me like you're not Arab, like they got really mad about it too, because my mom's Lebanese friends they fled Lebanon during the Lebanese Civil War, and I remember like the husband got really mad at me for saying I'm Arab, like really upset with that. But yeah,
They
it
colonized
was
us
a,
so bad that we forgot who we were. Didn't even don't even know who we are anymore.
absolutely they did.
Hmm.
I mean, the reason we don't speak Coptic in Egypt is because Hakim Amrillah, used to go around cutting off the tongues of Coptic Egyptians.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had never had a strong Coptic identity. I had a relatively strong Egyptian identity, but I didn't have a strong Arab identity either until it was sort of towards the end of high school, entering college, where I met more Syrians, Lebanese, Palestinians. In Massachusetts, it felt like I was the only Egyptian there. It really did. And then I moved to California. I think around 2004. It was like right at the end of my junior year of high school. And so my senior year was kind of like, whatever. It was just, a waiting period to go to college. But that's when I started meeting a lot more Arabs. And that's how I sort of entered the pro-Palestinian stuff.
Okay, so did you visit Egypt periodically growing up? Did you ever live there for an extended period of time?
Never lived there, but I used to go frequently up until I was 14.
Okay.
Up until I was 14, I would go every couple of years. And it was always during the summer. So I would spend like, it was always after my birthday. So I would spend the second half of July and the first half of August and then come back, which is also like the worst months to be in Egypt.
Hmm.
So, I would mostly be in Alexandria, but I would go out to Cairo a couple times each time to see my dad's family as well.
Hmm. So getting pulled into the anti-Semitic cult, pro-Palestinian, all of that being mixed together in a soup, do you think that came more from just the Egyptianness, the Coptic Christianness, or the just Americanness? Like where did it come from? How did it
It
reach
came,
you?
it didn't come from my parents at all. Like it didn't emanate from the Coptic Church at all. My parents were very, very hush about the Israeli-Palestinian thing. I knew that Egypt had gone to war against Israel. I knew that we had lost those wars, but my parents didn't make a big deal out of it. They're like, yeah, that's what happened, and now we have peace, and that's it. The anti-Semitism did not develop until I started meeting um, Arab Muslims in California. And it was, this story always sticks out. This is during the very, very, very early days as I'm at a hookah bar and I'm talking to an older Palestinian gentleman. I'm probably like 17, 18 at this age. And I'm asking him, I'm like sort of trying to access his moderate side. And I'm saying like, oh, well, we want a two-state solution, right? And he said, absolutely not, one state, Palestine. And so I was like, okay, but we don't want, hurting civilians is wrong, right? And he said, there is no such thing as an Israeli civilian. They are all valid targets.
Yeah.
And then so I am desperate. I'm desperate. So I thought I was going to go with what I thought would be, okay, I'm definitely going to get a moderate answer out of this. So I was like, okay, but suicide bombing is obviously wrong. And he looked at me without skipping a beat and he says, Habibi, this is all we have.
Yeah.
And then, I remember like that being the first moment where I was like, am I sure this is like okay? Am I sure this is what I want to get involved in? But I didn't want to refuse because up until that point, I didn't have a collective that I belonged to. I
Mm.
really didn't fit in with the cops. I didn't fit in with the Americans. Um, I didn't have that collective. And this felt the most familiar to me because, listen, we both speak Arabic. We have a shared experience being, from the Middle East, living in America. The music we listen to is the same. The movies we watch were the same. Our parents would say the same thing. So that felt so familiar to me where it just felt like, okay, just, you trick yourself into thinking, well, they don't mean it. They'll
Hmm.
moderate,
Hmm.
it's not really like that. You West blame yourself
Hmm.
because you want to believe that there's no way they can really be like this. And what ends up happening is they don't moderate. You actually end up becoming more extreme.
So well said, Michael. You're absolutely correct. And you also made a really good point about that sense of belonging. For those of us who are first generation, or even people that now that are like stuck online and never really feeling like they belong anywhere, like there's so many people that would relate to what you just talked about there, that sense of belonging being it's a human like it's a vital part of us. We are tribal, we are pack animals, right? And we want to belong somewhere. And if you feel like that's fulfilling your sense of belonging, then you're going to justify the things that you're seeing because your need to belong and your need to feel like you're part of a community is fulfilling you on an emotional level. So intellectually, you're going to be like, well, they don't really mean that, or they're not actually going to do that, or that's just theoretical. Like you'll justify it because you're getting so much comfort from being part of this group. And I think that that's probably very, very, very true for a lot of people that are being pulled into this right now. Because a cult never starts off with, hey, we're looking for suicide bombers, right? It's going to start off with, do you want to be a good person? Do you want to support the oppressed against the oppressors? You know what I mean? So it pulls in
Mhm.
people with the gentleness, the kindness, the goodness. And then once you're in there, once you're hooked, then at that point is when you start to see the other side of it, and by then you're so hooked, you're almost like you just said, you're willing to go along with it. They don't change. They don't become less um, violent or radical. Like they don't change their goals, but they get you to change who you are slowly over time.
And that's a big thing to it because you have to put yourself in their minds, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't have to concede on anything that they believe, if they don't have to moderate on anything that they believe, but you're the one who, is sort of co-signing everything that they do, what is that? What kind of message do you send to them? So like
Mm-hmm.
when I see, gays for Gaza or people who have like the trans flag in their bios and they're supporting Hamas, if you're an Islamist, what you think is my cause is so righteous that even these people who I consider to be bottom feeders and hate with all my heart, they're going to support me as well. So I know what I'm doing is right. And you have to keep in mind, they truly believe they're the good guys.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
think they're the bad guys.
Mm-mm. They feel like Allah's on their side. The world is on their side. Look how everybody's supporting, celebrating Hamas and like changing their profile pictures to the paragliders. Like it's just, yeah, they feel like they are the good ones for sure. So you got pulled into this pro-Palestinian advocacy. Did the anti-Semitism come first, or did it come after the pro-Palestinian advocacy? Which was it, chicken or the egg?
After it came after,
Mm-hmm.
um, because in the beginning this was back in 2006, 2007 ish, and back then they were more subtle than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
Back then it was Zionists, it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
Jews, right? Even though in Arabic, they
Yeah.
wouldn't say Sahina, they would say Yahud, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they were using the word Zionist more than they were saying the word Jew.
Mm-hmm.
It would escalate and escalate and escalate. I remember one time, I went out for a friend's birthday. I think it was his 21st birthday, and he's Muslim, but he's out there drinking and everything, just like most of them do in America when they're that young. And he got hammered, and we're in Long Beach, walking the streets of Long Beach, and he starts yelling out the Arabic version of "F the Jews,"
Yeah.
you
His
know?
tongue is loosened now.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
like it's like I mean screaming it, Yasmine, screaming it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a a hornet's nest of anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like I was the only non-Muslim there, where there were a couple other Arab Christians, like a Syrian Christian, a Lebanese Christian that was also there. But I saw them going through the same thing. Like they would even use the same insults. So like what they would do is like, if somebody was being stingy, they'd say, "Oh, you're such a Jew. Why
Uh-huh.
are you acting like a Jew?" Like even they were doing it. It is
Mm-hmm.
this sort of peer pressure to cave into your most hateful instincts. And
Mm-hmm.
I tried resisting it. That's actually too strong a word. I tried to sort of just stay out of that as much as I could, but eventually I gave in. Because at the same time, you are being bombarded with images of Palestinians suffering, and you are also taught that if if me as a religious minority in Egypt is suffering, it's because in 1948 Israel was established and it destabilized the entire Middle East, and that's why the Muslims are killing us today.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes so much sense.
yeah, because they never killed us before.
That's right. And the whole concept of dhimmi and jizya and all that Jews started that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm kind of picturing what you're describing here. You're with a group of Muslims. There's a few Assyrians, Coptics. Anti-Semitism is, rife in this friend group. And I'm kind of getting the feeling that you're feeling like, correct me if I'm wrong, you're pull to convert to Islam was almost you wanting to cleanse yourself and wanting to be one of the good guys. If they're going around, no. Okay, tell me.
No, because I didn't convert to Islam until much, much later in life.
Okay.
I converted to Islam in 2021
Hmm.
or 2020. My entrance into the pro-Palestinian advocacy was around like 2006, 2007.
Hmm.
So it was a while. I was agnostic, basically
Hmm.
all. I have been
And they
agnostic since.
accepted you. They were fine. They don't care. You could be, it doesn't matter who
Yeah,
you
they didn't
are.
care.
Yeah,
They
as long as
didn't
you're part
care.
on their team, they're cool with you.
I spoke Arabic, and that was, and actually for them, if I'll be honest, for them, they would rather you be agnostic than being a Christian, because being a Christian means you're a mushrik. You're
Uh-huh.
committing shirk. You're associating partners with God. So
Hmm.
they actually preferred that I was agnostic,
Right. Because then you're
because
a potential Muslim.
right, right. Yeah, if, like they would tell me like, we don't agree with you, but we think that it's smart that you came to that conclusion about Christianity.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, but yeah, I've basically been agnostic since the age of 10.
Hmm.
Like I knew I didn't believe at the age of 10. I knew it.
Hmm. So tell me
Um,
about the slippery slope into, you know, the next edition of the monotheistic trilogy. How did that happen?
I was going through a pretty rough time in my life. I got out of a very serious relationship where I thought like that she was sort of like the one, and that was tough getting out of. And then a few months later, I somebody very close to me, I found them overdosing, and had
Oh
I
my
not found
God.
them, they would have died. And it was a really pretty tough experience for me. But that was also around the time of COVID. And so, a lot of time to yourself, not a lot of communication. And by this time, all my friends had moved outside of the state. One moved a couple hours up north, and the rest moved to New Jersey and New York. And so, I remember, I've actually remember exactly the channel that I started watching it's something called Halal Sheikh on YouTube. And, it's like these clips of imams and dais talking about Islam, and it's presented in a very cute, wholesome way, like these 3-minute clips. And so, like, in your head, you're like, oh, okay, I've always had reservations about Islam, but there's also some nice things here. And if I can, appreciate the nice things, and I don't have to explicitly say outwardly that I agree with the things that I have reservations about, maybe I can make this work. And I remember there is this verse in the Quran that I read, and it's the verse where it says, God is closer to you than your jugular vein. And it struck me pretty hard. And then I remember I went to my friend's wedding in New Jersey, one of my Muslim friends' weddings. And while I was hanging out at his house, he said, "Excuse me, brother, I have to go for like 10, 15 minutes. It's the evening prayers." And I remember he left me there for like, however long it took him. And I remember sitting there saying to myself, wow, like that takes a lot of commitment. Like his faith is so strong. For some reason, that had a really big effect on me because I was living a very hedonistic lifestyle at that point. I had nothing was, I it was almost like a lack of direction. I felt like very purposeless. And so I actually like really admired that he would be able to pull himself away from a social gathering to say, I'm gonna go pray. Like I could not have fathomed that. I just couldn't have. And that's eventually I actually ended up confiding to him that like, listen, I'm, been seriously none of my friends ever tried to convert me. I will say that. None of them tried.
Wow.
I will say that once I had told him like I'm considering converting to Islam, and then they took it very seriously because then it was like, no, you need to say your shahada right now because if you die a kafir, you're going to go to hell and all. Like that's really like once you express the tiniest bit of interest, they will work overtime for you to get you to say your shahada.
Hmm. They usually don't even wait for that, so that was pretty surprising of your friends. Usually it's just right away.
Well, they also knew I was like a militant secularist, so
So it sounds to me that it was more of a spiritual decision. It more than a like a pro-Palestine hating Jews kind
it was
of.
both. It was
Hmm.
both. It's just that like I sort of chalked it up to, well, ideologically you feel this way. And so this, Islam definitely complements that ideology. I mean, you can't deny that anti-Semitism is embedded within Islam.
Hmm.
So it does feel like it validates what I feel. Like, it's no longer just a political ideology. It's
Everything clicking
politics
into
and faith.
place. All of your.
Right,
Hmm.
right.
And then from there, did you find that you started to become more militant and more having these violent thoughts of wanting to kill every Israeli? Like, was that after your conversion to Islam, or was that were you having those thoughts even beforehand?
I had those thoughts beforehand because I was a very, very strong supporter of Bashar al-Assad.
Oh
Um,
boy.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I was a very strong supporter of Bashar al-Assad. I saw Syria under the Assad regime as sort of like the last bastion of, pan-Arabism. And because within my friends group, there was a split. Everything was fine up until the Arab Spring. And everybody was fine with the revolution in Tunisia, everybody was fine with the revolution in Egypt. But once it came to Syria, that drew some real divisions because Syria is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society.
Hmm.
And me, I took the line, okay, well, because Bashar al-Assad is secular, that means, he's going to be the only one that will protect religious minorities. And so I supported him to the hilt. Um, and so you already had that in you. And also because Egypt and Syria were so closely linked together in their wars against Israel that yeah, that feeling had existed.
Hmm. So how do you go from your murderous rage against Israelis to sitting here today calling yourself a Zionist?
Well, I wouldn't say that I myself was murderous. I would
Hmm.
not have murdered, but I hated them. I hated them with a
Hmm.
passion. I
Hmm.
attribute like that the like, kill every Israeli type thing to what the cause represents in and of itself, because they will tell
Uh-huh.
you themselves that there is no such thing as an Israeli
Innocent.
civilian, for
Yeah,
instance.
they even said that
Every
about the
one of them is a
babies on October
settler and all
7th.
that.
Hmm.
Right, right. And so how do I go from that to being pro-Israel? It's my parents were Zionists. That is,
Oh.
I think, probably even though they would never say themselves they were Zionists because of just the baggage of the term. But my parents, like particularly my dad, hated Islam, and so he hated the Palestinian cause, with that, because he just saw it as an extension of Islam. And so I think if I had grown up in a typical Arab Muslim household, or even like an Arab Christian household, because there's a lot of Arab Christians who grow up with the same anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
If I grew up in that typical household, I don't think I ever would have left because it would have been embedded in me since birth. It would have been something that I'd been showered with since I was a young kid, and that wasn't the case. My parents always thought that the pro-Palestinian cause was stupid and worthless, and
Hmm.
like they always supported Israel,
You had a
which was
counterbalance.
right. And I've always also had in the back of my mind, what if you're wrong about everything? And I still have that in the back of my mind. I keep that in mind that I could be wrong about everything. I
That's
think I took that
healthy.
from my philosophy class
Hmm.
because in philosophy, the first thing you learn is what do you know? You know nothing. Um, and but I remember when October 7th happened,
Hmm.
and it pains me to say this, but my reaction to it was that it was a good thing on the day that it happened. I
Hmm.
hate saying that out loud, but that is how I felt. But then, as the days and weeks went on, information came out about October 7th, the rapes, tying women to trees and the mutilization, the setting people on fire, the kidnapping of, babies, and, what they did at Nova. And it was
So
so
wait, what
hard.
part did you think was a good thing? So what had you heard that made you say this was good? Did you just heard there was a resistance of some sort, but you didn't know exactly what had happened?
Knowing that Israelis died,
Okay.
knowing that Israelis died was a good thing. Knowing that Israelis suffered was a good thing.
Hmm.
But then as the information started leaking out, you come to realize that it wasn't just that Israelis died. They died in the most horrific ways. They were kidnapped. They were raped, and I had a choice. I could either accept that and withdraw myself from that cause, or I would do what I had done before in the past, which is I am going to deny, deflect, warp what happened. And I, oh my God, it's so shameful. Um, yeah, it's the inversion of reality. When you are in that cause for so long, you know how to invert reality. You know how to create doubt. And if I can create a seed of doubt in somebody's mind, I can deny everything that happens, and I can get other people to deny it. But then a week or two later, or several weeks later, I remember my dad called me and he asked me to have lunch with him,
Hmm.
and went out to see him, and he just sat me down and he said, "Listen." Mentioned to me that you have been posting a lot more than you usually have. You've been incredibly outspoken about this, and I need you to understand that Hamas went and they raped women. They tied women up, they burned them alive, they mutilated them. He said, if you keep going with this, I'm really afraid you're gonna just become something completely different. I feel like I'm gonna lose you to this.
Hmm.
And my dad doesn't like talking politics with me up to that point because we would always clash. Like I used to look at my parents as traitors, like really looked at them as traitors. Um, and it took a lot for him to make that call because he knew how just ideologically driven I was. And
Hmm.
so it took a lot for him to make that call. And then I remember a week later, it was during Halloween. So this is still in the month of October. And I remember I went to San Diego with my girlfriend and my friends at the time. And we were bar hopping one night. And I remember I stopped at a red light. We're waiting for the light to turn green. And in front of me, I am looking at some sort of structure and it has posters of the hostages on it. And I can't remember which hostages they were, but I just
Hmm.
remember I'm looking at these posters of the hostages. And all I can think about is how I saw videos of somebody defacing posters of the hostages. And I
Hmm.
really had this moment, and it felt like it lasted an eternity. It felt like it lasted so long, but it might have lasted like 5 seconds. But I had this moment where I said to myself, you might be a piece of shit, but you're not such a piece of shit that you would ever do something like this.
Yeah.
And that was the first moment that I had where it was like, I can't describe, the only way I can describe it, Yasmine, is like, it felt like the blood in my veins evaporated.
Yeah.
It was the closest I've had to an outer body experience
Hmm.
was looking at the poster of the hostages.
Hmm.
And then later, people who I hated for a long time started gravitating to the pro-Palestinian stuff. People like Andrew Tate, Candace
Hmm.
Owens, these are
Hmm.
people who I really, really despised.
Hmm.
And once I found them on the same side of things as me, people who I thought were grifters, I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like I just, you become disgusted with yourself because I
Hmm.
saw these people as people who prey on weak and vulnerable people. And then I had to ask myself, are they simply just a mirror image of me? And I really
Yeah.
just hate, like, is my hatred towards them really? me hating what I am.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it was slowly chipping away at me, slowly chipping. And then I would see the way that they reacted. So in April of 2024, there was the Iranian missile attack against Israel. And I remember everybody is cheering this. They're cheering the Iranian missile attack. And
Mhm.
I'm actually, and not only are they cheering it, but they are bad mouthing the Arab countries that are participating in shooting down the missiles. So
Yeah.
Jordan, Saudi Arabia, these countries. And in my head, I'm like, why are you bad mouthing? Like, you don't get it. Like these countries, if they allow Iran to use their airspace to throw missiles at Israel, Israel is well within their rights to target these countries. Like you guys just don't get it. You're short-sighted. And another thing is like I was always supportive of the women life freedom movement. And it was very, very difficult to juxtapose that with the pro-Palestinian stuff.
Mhm.
It was like holding onto a hot coal.
Mhm.
And it was just this pattern of obscene, disgusting behavior that I had tolerated for so long. And I really reached my breaking point. And it got to the point where I, I, I fucking gave it up. And like, not just gave it up, I sort of like took it out back and just shot it in the fucking head.
Mhm.
Um, and I deleted everything,
Mhm.
everything on my profile. Free Palestine scrubbed it. Every post that I made scrubbed it. I mean, I just scrubbed it all. And
Mhm.
I remember being at the gym. This was a couple weeks. This was sometime in like early June. Yeah, it had to be early June. And I'm at the gym and I pull up my phone. This is a couple weeks after I'd like scrubbed my profile. And I pull up my phone and there's a notification saying that one of the Israeli hostages had been rescued, Noah Argamani.
Mhm.
And I was happy. I was really happy because, and this is probably the ever been happy because an Israeli was saved or like for their well-being. And I remember I was so happy about it. And I was like, okay, maybe this is great. Maybe this is like brings us closer to the end of the war. And then, as happy as I was about that, immediately I was outraged because I was still, my social circle is still pro Palestinian. I didn't get rid of my friends. I just sort of like silently bowed out of that movement. My social
Uh,
circle, everybody, my social media was still, so I would see this crap all day. And I'll never remember the post that I saw. It was from a Palestinian comedian named Sami Ubaid. And he said, if if I'm ever held hostage somewhere and you have to kill X amount of people to free me, just leave me hostage. And I was like, this is the most disingenuous piece of shit I've ever seen in my life because I have my dogs with me right now. If even one of my dogs was kidnapped, I would burn down the fucking world to get my dog back. I don't care. I would spare no effort to get my dogs back. So I can't imagine what it's like to have a loved one held hostage by the most brutal, ruthless terror regime that you can imagine. So it like that. I remember just being so mad because it felt so dishonest, so disingenuous.
mhm.
So, sorry, I got really, really animated right
No,
there.
Michael, I really just want to reach through this laptop and give you a hug. Like you've said so much. First of all, I have to commend your father for being a strong, solid, good man. You know, he watched his son convert to the religion that he hated, and he still, kind of stood by you and let you do your thing and go through your process. But when he saw you losing your humanity and, celebrating the deaths of innocent people, that's when he was like, okay, I need to step in. So I'm really grateful to him for doing that. You're right. You were very, you were kind of like, I guess, which is typical for a lot of college aged kids, is to just like go the opposite of your parents. Um, but I'm really glad that he reached out to you and he allowed you to kind of see the route that you were going was a very negative one. And I'm really, really grateful that your humanity was able to override your indoctrination. And that moment that you talked about when you saw the posters of the Israelis who had been kidnapped, and that feeling that you described of like, oh, I might be a piece of shit, but I'm not going to be that bad. That reminds me of 9/11. So, like, much older than you. For me, that was my 9/11 moment where born and raised Muslim, went to Islamic schools, lived in Islamic countries. These were my people. This was my community. This is my identity. This is all I knew. And to watch them celebrating jubilation, joy, excitement, boosting of their morale, watching innocent people die on 9/11. I had that same feeling that you described there, where it was like, I can't be that bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I've accepted everything up until this point about this religion and this community, but I can't. This is where we part ways. And in fact, I actually wrote a post when all those videos of people pulling down the pictures of the hostages, and I said, even as an indoctrinated Muslim, even as anti-Semitic as I was, even head to toe in niqab and married to a terrorist, like as extremist as you could imagine, I could have never pulled down the pictures of people who were taken hostages by terrorists. Like, I just don't, they are really, their minds have truly been possessed with a level of hate that is just beyond anything that I can comprehend. So I'm actually grateful that you had that kernel in the back of your mind that you described of constantly feeling like, am I wrong about everything? That is a very healthy thing to keep in your mind at all times, to just keep your mind open and to never really fall down deeply into any rabbit holes, but always keeping your mind open to the fact that maybe I don't know, maybe I will change my mind depending on the new information that I receive. And I'm so grateful for your father and so grateful for your mind that you were able to pull yourself out of that. And I'm really, really grateful for you for being so honest and telling us all about this. I know you're feeling a lot of guilt. I know it's probably turning your stomach right now, but the fact that you're coming here and, sharing all of this with us, exposing your heart and your mind and, being so raw with us is, I really hope, going to help other people and let them see how incredibly dangerous this path is. And I hope that it will also allow them to see that, the resilience of humanity and the fact that I got myself out, the fact that you got yourself out, because people can get really despondent, right? But I truly believe that hearing stories like yours will help people feel like, okay, there is hope. So you're doing that for people today, Michael.
Even before that, even before the time where I was in front of those hostage posters in 2013 or 2014, I remember there was this Jewish family that lived in the city of Itamar in the West Bank. And I remember a terrorist came into the house and they killed everybody, including a baby in the crib. And I remember that was actually the first time where I condemned Palestinian terrorism and expressed sympathy for Israeli families. And I remember that moment because I remember how I got shouted down by my Arab Muslim friends, and their immediate pivot is Israel did it to itself, that it couldn't have possibly, yeah. And I just that moment also stood out to me, and I think that my dad also felt a little bit guilty about where I went in life, because he knows that he's sort of the reason why I stopped believing in Christianity. He knows he's the reason why I left the church. There was this very specific moment. I was a deacon in the church against my will. And I used to have to wake up at like 7 a.m. and go to a 3-hour liturgy at a Coptic church. And one time I was so tired I couldn't stand any longer. I remember I went downstairs to the bathroom and I rested my head against the toilet paper because it was so nice and full. I used it as a pillow. And then I woke up because my dad kicked down the door and just started beating the living crap out of me. And it was from that moment where I was like,
Mm,
I don't know what I am, but I'm not Christian anymore. I hate this fucking religion. And so he knows he's the reason why I stopped believing.
mm. And today, do you consider yourself like culturally Coptic or um, agnostic, or where do you, how do you identify now?
I believe in a higher power. I'm not religious whatsoever. I believe in a higher power. I don't know what it is,
Mm,
but that's about it. It's almost like an uninvolved roommate. You know, it's like, yeah, I don't really care to like have a relationship with it. Culturally Coptic, I could say that because every now and then, my mom will like there'll be like a Coptic festival at a church. Like my mom will want me to come with her, so I'll go with her, and it's fun. It's nice.
mhm.
But because Coptic just means Egyptian, it's like I'm able to isolate this Egyptian identity as being purely Egyptian, not Egyptian Arab.
Yes,
So
yes,
that's what I have the most pride in. Like, or not even pride, it's just like that's my identity.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Very recently, I went to Egypt, and it was almost like a personal pilgrimage where I was just going to all the ancient Egyptian places that were I grew up believing were Jahiliyyah, like the age of ignorance, and we shouldn't be proud of that. This is all pre-Islamic nonsense. And went back with a new set of eyes of just with appreciation and in awe, really, of the ancient Egyptians and their ability to basically create the human civilization. They came up with everything, medicine, politics, art. It was just amazing and beautiful, and felt really wonderful to be connected to that. Now, of course, me coming from a colonizing family of Egyptians is very different than it would be for you as a Coptic. I mean, it's pretty cool to see that your bloodline of Coptic Egyptians, it's so much so, I'm sure you've seen this, where people post profile pictures of themselves and then of, all the busts that we have of the pharaohs, it's you've got the same facial structure. Like it's so
Mhm.
clear that this is where you come from. So that must fill you with pride.
I tested 100% Coptic Egyptian too. I did
There it
not even
is.
get a little bit of Greek. I was shocked.
That's fantastic. That's pretty cool. My 23andMe is like a rainbow of, I don't know. Who knows what could have happened and how it all happened, but I just see it as like rapes and forced conversions, and who else knows how I ended up getting all of these different ethnicities in my background. But I choose to identify with the Egyptian part of my heritage, and it was a lot of disentangling for me because Arabic meant Islam, Egyptian meant Islam. Like it was all very connected for me, and you know how it is. You can't really, if you're just speaking to an Egyptian friend, there's going to be all sorts of Islamic, even with Egyptian Christians. There's like inshallah, alhamdulillah, mashallah, whatever. Like it just comes up all the time. And so it was all very triggering for me, and I couldn't handle it. But it took me a while now, and that visit to Egypt was like 2022 or something, so
Oh,
quite
wow.
recent, where I could finally start to have a connection with the country that didn't include the Islamic part of it triggering me so much. Of course, it had a lot to do with the fact that I have a lot of atheist friends who are living in Egypt right now. And so they were like the people that
Nice.
I was were embracing and that were embracing me. So yeah, it's hard to disentangle, but I'm glad you were able to do it because we have a lot to be proud of, just not the current state of affairs.
We do. Although my mom tells me don't even think about going to Egypt
Yeah.
because I have a Hebrew tattoo, and yeah,
Okay, yeah, you'll have to cover that up.
it's
Yeah.
actually the names of the mother and the two children that were kidnapped and killed.
The Be Best Babies.
Yes.
That's beautiful. I'm so proud of you, Michael. You got out of this pretty quickly. Like this is all very recent. I'm
Relatively,
amazed.
yeah. Yeah, relatively recent. It was,
Yeah.
I'd say May 2024 is when I backed out, but I didn't start doing any sort of like, even like my advocacy. It took me like a very long time for me to like show my face.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm really proud of
Yeah,
you. Your resilience is amazing. I'm so glad you're here today, and we've got tons of people that have their hands up now who want to
yeah,
talk to you. So
yeah.
I'm going to have to take a back seat and let them get an opportunity now. But um, yeah, just my love and gratitude and respect for you, and you're such an amazing person. Courtney, we'll start with you.
Hello, how are you?
Hey,
Hey, me and Mike, we go back. I'm so proud of you, and like this is the best episode I've come to so far. I just think you're an amazing human, and I do have like a kind of two-part question. So how do you find the Jewish communities? Attitude towards peace with Palestinians as opposed to the Arab community's attitude? And also, how did the Jewish community receive you when you started speaking out? Because I know it took you a while into the war to start speaking out, and Jews have become very distrusting. So, yeah, I would love to know that.
so I'm gonna actually work backwards. I'm gonna answer the second question first. Um, so I was not honest with the Jewish friends that I had made up until about a month or two of like before I put out the Coptic Kapara Instagram page. So I had made Jewish friends and all that, but I had told them,
Mm,
oh yeah, I've always been pro-Israel, and like because I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed that if I told them the truth, that they would reject me. And so I remember, like, I started like around the beginning of last year, I started going to the synagogue because I actually developed like an interest in Judaism. And then I remember going to Purim, and they were so sweet and so kind to me. They gave me like this Purim like little gift box with like Hamatosh and everything. And I remember driving back home and I was so happy, but then I became immediately depressed because I thought about all the horrible things that I had said in my life, just my involvement in the cause. And I was so overridden with just like guilt that I went back home and I released this confessional that's like damn near 20 minutes long on my personal page. And it was basically a confessional directed towards my Jewish and Israeli friends that I'd made up until that time. And when they found out, they were like, is that it? Because they were like, we've heard so much worse. Like, this is
it's so common
yeah.
for
They're
people to
like, is
hate
that
us.
it? They don't
Yeah,
care. They really didn't care. So
yeah,
they have been like, they've been so gracious and forgiving to me. They were more forgiving to me than I was forgiving to myself.
Yeah.
And like, I will routinely get messages from Jewish people saying, I hope you come to be able to forgive yourself. So really, like, there's nothing like it. There really
Yeah.
isn't anything like it. I've never experienced that before in my life.
Yeah.
And then to answer your first question, how re how do Jewish people receive the prospect of peace versus my Arab and Muslim friends? Jewish people, understandably so, have shifted further and further to the right. And we could say that this has been going on since the Second Intifada, but definitely since October 7th, is that they've shifted further and they don't feel like peace is a real prospect. But I will say that the underlining hope of all of them is that they will have peace with their neighbors someday. And there still are many Israelis that want a two-state solution. Me personally, I will say this outright. I don't believe in a two-state solution. Um, I don't believe in a Palestinian state. I've just read too much of the history. I know too much about the culture. I know how intricately intertwined it is with Islamism and Islamic irredentism to believe that a two-state solution is possible. But I still know a lot of Israelis who do want that. I still know quite a few liberal, centrist Israelis who want peace, and that's even more so amongst the Jewish diaspora in the West. And what I say will be the sort of the major difference between that and my Arab friends is we literally never talk about peace. If you hear them talk right now, you will not hear the word peace. You will hear a very strong emphasis on justice. And what justice means to them is completely different than what you and I would interpret as justice. Justice means you have to dismantle, like if they feel that the existence of the state of Israel is the ultimate injustice, then that means justice can only be acquired by undoing Israel. And it would be a genocide. And you have to also understand what justice means in the minds of Muslims. It is not this sort of social justice, civil rights thing that you and I think of. Everything that is an injustice is what is outside of Islam. There is Dar al-Islam and there's Dar al-Harb. So things like democracy is an injustice. Polytheism is an injustice. Christianity is an injustice. They will tell you kufr and shirk. These are the two biggest injustices. And kufr means infidelity. Shirk means associating anything other than what Allah has provided in His sort of perfect system.
Yeah. Wonderfully answered. And I think it's like, I think of it in the way that Einat Wilf said. I think for me, I still believe that peace is an existential necessity. Like it someday. I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, but I can't stop hoping. And I think that's Jewish people, we have hoped to a fault.
I agree.
Yes. So, but thank you so, so much. And I'm really proud of you. Thank you.
I love you, Courtney. Thank you so much.
Love you too.
I've had a very similar experience to what you described there, Michael, on so many levels. Ira, you're next. Should I come back to you? I'll come back to you, Ira. Nancy, you go ahead.
Very sorry about that.
Oh, okay. 1 second, yes. Nancy.
Okay. My fault. All my fault. I was really impressed by your story and impressed by a number of things you said. One thing that struck me and raises a question is that when you saw gays and trans and other minorities that Islamic militants hated and would kill, you saw them out there demonstrating for Hamas and for Islamic militants. They told you, and you believed it at the time, that the reason they're doing it is because the Islamic militant cause is so righteous. It is the most righteous of all causes. And I have no doubt that is what those elites say among the gays and trans. But now that you don't think it's the most righteous of all causes or even righteous at all, what do you think is the actual reasons why the militant elites or militant ideologists in other minority groups, even minorities that are violently oppressed and hated by Islamic militants, are going around loudly supporting militant Islam and supporting Hamas? And I should say that I'm a member of a couple such minorities. I'm ethnically a Jew. And our leftist militants and elites among Jews, including a neighbor right across the street from me, are mostly supporting Hamas. Actively.
It's because, sorry.
Go ahead.
You have to understand how the Palestinian cause is presented to people in the West. So they don't present it as a strictly Islamic cause. And they don't highlight that Hamas is an Islamist group. It's presented purely as freedom fighters. They're like, oh, well, they're not even all religious, and they're orphans and all this. And so, and then there is the component on college campuses where it is the Left and Green Alliance. So it is presented to non-Arabs and non-Muslims as almost a secular fight. Like, you don't have to be Muslim, you don't have to be Arab to get involved in it. They present it as very secular. Right, and it is they will co-opt the language of leftists and social justice, but they will not co-opt the beliefs. They co-opt the language, but they don't co-opt the beliefs. And so it's really easy for them to to pull people in from these other sort of minority groups because they will say really crazy things like freeing Palestine will free all of us. Like really the craziest. And this is what's so, I don't even know how to call it funny or not, but I knew a girl that was a sex worker. She was Jewish, a Jewish sex worker who was pro Hamas, pro Hezbollah, pro IRGC. And I remember there were times where I would look at her and I was like, ma'am, are you lost? Like, I didn't get it. Like, even as somebody was so, like, because I'm a secularist at heart. Even when I was Muslim, like, I could never, like, I never wanted to live under a Sharia country. Hell no. I still wanted to live like a secularist. And they just have a very warped understanding of what good and evil is. They really think that they feel that if I support the people that would kill me otherwise, wow, look at me. I am such a good person. I am so selfless. I have no self-interest. And that's it is this almost sort of suicidal altruism to support a movement in which, you would be the first to be slaughtered if you lived under such a regime.
Yeah. I think you got part of the way to where I am on that question, but I'd like to suggest there was a French radical who converted to Islam after the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers. And his explanation was in one sentence: they're the ones who are doing it. Doing it meant fighting against the West.
Right.
And in my experience, militant Islam, is at the top of the intersectional hierarchy. And there is an intersectional hierarchy. They're at the top of it because they are seen as the most useful to the anti-Western cause. That is the real criterion, and all these universalist language causes, explanations, are subordinated to fighting against the West, which is supposedly the way to realize all universal purposes. But the real orientation, the defining orientation, is against the West. And that's logical in its own way. It's not hypocrisy. It's a horrible orientation, but it's real.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's this girl named Jeanne Matari. She's a Palestinian author, and she spreads some of the most violent rhetoric I've seen. And she's on a book tour right now, and I managed to get two of her events canceled, one here in LA and one in New Jersey. She ended up rescheduling the one in Jersey. And what's crazy about the one that she was able to reschedule in Jersey was she got Jewish Voice for Peace to promote it at the Quaker House.
Yeah.
And it was like I couldn't cancel it in time because they weren't answering their phones. They only opened on like Friday or Saturday. But it is insane to me that this is where we are in life. That like this woman, she has stuff that says Israel and Israeli society cannot exist. Nothing is unprovoked with Zionists. She blamed the Bibas family for their own kidnapping and murder.
Yeah.
My neighbor across the street is a Jew who turns out is a member of Jewish Voices for Peace. It's disgusting. I mentioned she was trying to discuss with me like a good liberal. But we're not. It's not anti-Semitism. I said, well, some of them really are. Jewish Voices for Peace. My God, that's militant anti-Semitism. She said, I'm a member of Jewish Voices for Peace.
Yeah, they are anti-Zionist for sure, and they are what are described as the self-hating Jews.
Yeah, I am not Zionist. I'm non-Zionist. Anti-Zionism in today's world is obviously anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ira.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's wonderful.
Yeah. I think that one thing that's really important to note here with everything that you've been saying, Michael, is that they really understand the Western mindset really, really well. But here in the West, we don't understand their mindset. And even when where people like you and me are trying to express what they think and how they think and all of the things that you were saying, people don't want to let it in. They can't believe that to be true. It doesn't fit with their belief system of what humans are. Do you know what I mean? Like, it fits for them to believe, oh, these are resistance fighters and justice and all that stuff, right? But they don't want to believe what we're trying to tell them, which is the truth of what these groups are. So it's almost like we have been hacked by them, like the West, and our mindset is like, it's out there. You go, like, the way we think, the way we empathize, the suicidal empathy that you're talking about. They know that if they show these images, that we're just going to immediately emotionally react, and almost to the point of not caring what the context is. You see a baby suffering, you're not going to care about what the context is. They got us, they hooked us, and then the opposite is true too. They've hooked us so bad that when we see Israeli babies, we see Israeli women, we see Israeli kids at a music concert, we're already hooked into believing, well, they're settlers and they deserve what they get. You know what I mean? Like, they just did such a good job of hacking into the Western mindset, and the opposite is not true. We have nobody in the West like very few people have a real understanding of how these groups think. And so it's
The Muslims
totally
in
lopsided.
the Muslims in America and Canada learned the mistakes from the Muslims in Europe. The
Yep.
Muslims in Europe have an extremism that is right in your face. There was that one group called Al Muhajirun where they celebrated 9/11 and stuff like that. The Muslims in America learn from those mistakes. The Muslims in America present a different kind of threat because they have an assimilated extremism. Janan Matari is pro-gay rights, pro-trans, and all this stuff. So for the American left, for the American liberal, they're like, oh, well, she conceded this for us, right?
Yeah.
But she's extreme literally on everything else. The most dangerous type of extremism is the one that you cannot tell right away. They are assimilated enough to mask their extremism.
Yes. And that is what Hassan al-Banna said. So that he's the grandfather of the Muslim Brotherhood. Basically, he started this whole Islamist project of like anti-West, pro-Islam, tangled up mess that we're dealing with. And that is what he said. He said, have your children in the West so that they can infiltrate successfully. They'll understand how people think over there and they'll know how to speak to them. We'll never be able to do that, him speaking as an Egyptian, right? Like, we won't be able to do that. But if we raise our children in the West, they'll be able to do that. And that's exactly what's been happening. And we can see through them, but progressives, your average Americans, whatever, they don't. They think like, oh, this is somebody on our side.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I apologize for not being seen. I wasn't feeling well today, but I'm so pleased to be able to connect with all of you. And the first thing I'd like to say before I even introduce myself the way I wish to is thank you, Michael, and thank you, Yasmine. I'm sitting here and I've been in tears the entire time. I'm trying to help myself stop crying so I can speak to you. And I hope I get to see you face to face, Michael, one day. There's so much that I can share that would probably be shocking to everyone, even listening here. And I'm so pleased, like I said, to find all of you. Yes, I want to applaud your courage, Michael. I really applaud your courage. And I pray to my version of God, which is goodness, just goodness, no matter what religion one looks to or does not, to goodness, to love. And I see that coming from you, and I pray that you'll be protected as you speak the truth. And I believe that you will be. And you're doing something so important. Please don't ever forget this. So,
Thank you, Nancy.
You're so welcome. By way of introduction, and it may sound confusing, I'm going to tell you what I believe, all of you. And I'll start with a title that I have, and I don't believe in titles, but this will sort of explain why I'm so affected.
Sorry, Nancy. I'm just going to interject for a moment here and just remind you that we have quite a few people waiting. So please try to be as concise as you possibly can.
problem. It won't take long right now.
All right.
So I'm what's known as a philosopher of ethics, my background, and academically. So I wish I knew less about the history of all these things and various things that we're talking about here. But my thought is this: I was brought up to be kind, to be loving, to be magnanimous, to share, to love all human beings, to value life above all else, that children are so precious, that we're all precious, that the earth is precious, to never be unkind or harm another. All of these things is what I was taught. And I was brought up Jewish. So I nonetheless was open to everything and everyone. And at this point in my life, there's so much that I could share, but I'd like to say to you, I know what it's like to be hated and to have things thrown at me and to be discriminated against and more. But I'm wondering, Michael, since there isn't much time now, what you suggest as a young person, given that, Yasmine, I've heard you say you can't convince somebody who has this inbred. It's not easy. We can't simply say, I'm a good person, I care about you. They're not going to hear us necessarily. So I'm asking you, Michael, what do you think would be a method for us at this point when there is so much anti-Semitism? It is everywhere. It's in academia, I know, because I've lived there. It's in every school. It's all over. What do you think we can do to make headway aside from this type of a meeting ground? What can we do? We have to protect ourselves. I have to be careful. I've spoken on the radio and I was told that I have to not say, they can't say my name. I have to be hidden. So what do you suggest as means for other young people or people that are not young to find their way to tell the truth so that more good, like what's happening within you, Michael, can come to others, given all of the complicity and all the confusion and all of the ugliness that seems to be everywhere, to show the beauty that's possible? Do you have any thoughts about what we can do as a community of people who care about other people, all people?
Dale Carnegie once said that you can never convince somebody against their will.
Yes.
And unfortunately, anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, these are things that are born out of several different crises. As of right now in this country, we have a crisis of identity and we have an information crisis. So unfortunately, I cannot really give a whole lot of advice on what the Jewish people can do other than keep doing what you're doing, because the one good thing about the Jewish community, amongst other things, is that the message is very, very consistent. You can't really deny the archaeology. You can't deny the history. So those are amazing things that they have. But the problem is that we are in an information war. And I don't even like calling it an information war because it's really an information war versus an industry of lies. Yeah, I will say this. As somebody who's Egyptian, I benefit from the bigotry of low expectations. So I am able to fight the pro-Palestinians with the same tenacity that I had when I was pro-Palestinian. And people don't really take an issue with that because I'm Egyptian and they already have this bigotry of low expectations. So I'm allowed to say and do things that you guys just can't get away with. You have to bludgeon this movement. You have to metaphorically, you have to fight it like it's existential. This is war. You have to just rip their fucking throats out, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, by fire with fire. Thank you. Thank you for your question, and thank you, Michael. Mars, you're next.
Thank you, Yasmine. Michael, I was very, very touched by your story, including some details about your family. I can relate to some of that. The question I have for you is, in the conversations and in your efforts, what have your dialogues been like? What have they resulted in when you try to speak to the members of the pro-Palestinian crowd? I mean, they're an ideologically compromised group, and people are just so willing to latch onto their ideas of like words like genocide, apartheid. But anyone who's actually ever taken the effort to actually research a little bit into the history of Israel and its peoples knows that stuff is just, it's bullocks. but it's hard to reach people like that. What have your results been like?
The thing is that I don't really talk to them as much as I attack them. It is my firm belief that the tactics that the I will say the reasonable side of the world, the reasonable side of life believe in, have not worked because you are essentially trying to fight fire with, I don't know what, but you have to fight fire with fire. So I is in a way being pro-Palestinian for so long sort of built me for this position because I know how to fight back against them. First off, they hate not being taken seriously. They hate being humiliated. And I don't normalize them. To me, I won't normalize them. I'm not going to give them the dignity of like addressing them as though they are, you know, regular human beings with regular opinions. This isn't, we're not talking about people that are slightly left of center, slightly right of center. No, we are talking about people that believe in the same things as terrorists, and they need to be treated like terrorists. That's what needs to happen. So these pro-Palestinian groups, they need like I'm hoping that these groups get labeled as hate groups. The first off, I would love to see the Muslim Brotherhood get banned in this country. I would love to see CARE get banned in this country. I would love to see UNRWA be branded as a terrorist organization and sanctioned. I am not going to give them an inch. I have to fight them, and I have to wage a cultural war against them, against Islam. I do not believe in peace with them, and I am not a peacemaker.
That's an interesting point. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You sound so Arab right now, Michael. I know you said you're not Arab, but that was very Arab of you.
I got built for this.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like once you can't fight fire with marshmallows. You know what I mean? You can't respond to this with like love and peace and kumbaya and you just can't. Like you don't know what you're up against. And so we do know because we lived in it. We lived, breathed, existed in that. That was us. And so we can see how incredibly ridiculous it is really to not recognize what it is that you're up against. Like you're so like a sitting duck right now. So I totally get what you're saying, Michael. Katya, you're next.
Hello. I was going to say that I'm just in awe of your like courage and honesty, but the more I'm listening to you, I'm like in awe of this balance of like I'm sorry how to pronounce it. Vulnerability, yes, and also this like fire and fighting spirit. It's like amazing. Thank you very much for your story. I wanted to ask you, how are you dealing with the changes in your like friend circle? I guess there is a lot of happening there, and also if like have you found a community where you feel this belonging right now instead of previous one?
Here with us.
Yeah,
I will say
besides us.
I will say this is that I no longer look for a sense of belonging because I recognize that, opinions are fluid, groups, collectives are fluid. I'm not going to tie myself to a position that can easily change. I will say that I lost 99% of my friends. And I have Armenians that married into my family, that are extended Armenian family. And even them, though that was the only part of my family that turned against me, was my Armenian family. But, I love where I am right now, socially. I don't need a lot socially. I have my dogs, whom I love with all my heart. That keeps me happy. But I have a few close friends, and that is good enough for me. I am really happy with who I am. I'm comfortable with who I am. And that means more to me than anything. I am not going to, tether myself to a collective. I have this set of beliefs. and I believe that they are righteous, and I act upon those beliefs. But if Israel tomorrow, for some unforetold reason, were to start acting like the IRGC, basically the Jewish version of, or a military dictatorship, I couldn't bring myself to keep supporting the government. I couldn't do it because that would go against every single one of my values. It is not I'm going to support you at all costs type thing, not like how I was with the pro-Palestinians, and Israelis, and this is the good thing, is I know that Israelis wouldn't want me to support it at that cost either. A lot of them wouldn't. I'm not going to say that all, I'm not going to say that Israeli society is a monolithic and they're all just, incredible statesmen. No, there's a toxic element to every society. But Israelis, for the most part, they have this balance of we want to be a Jewish democratic state. We don't want to be like the surrounding countries. And that's why I have faith in Israel.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Beautiful. For those of you who are watching this on the video, you don't get to see all the hearts that Michael just got for that beautiful response. And I've loved hearing it. I'm so happy that you've reached there. I think that that's like the healthiest place to possibly be. The smaller your circle is, and of course, if it includes dogs, that's the best. But yeah, just keeping yourself honest and real, and not swaying towards whatever tribe, cult, religion, group that you're with, but just staying true to yourself. Beautiful. Ken Cat, you are next.
Hi. So, right, I am trying to navigate while holding the leash of my dog. So 1 second. So, first, I wanted to say, sorry if there's noise in the background. I wanted to say to Michael that, I mean, especially the part that you shared about your parents. I mean, I had a similar experience, but not coming from religion. So, I think it's amazing that you brought yourself to actually share that, because the part of transparency, I think, is, I don't know, I just feel like it made me a better person. So, I mean, really kudos. And also, I wanted to tell you that no matter what ideology your surrounding has, I mean, honestly, never mind if it's pro-Palestine, pro-Israel, whatever. I just hope that you will find a circle that just accepts you as who you are, nothing more. And also, I'm an Israeli, and at the beginning of this talk, really, it was so hard for me to hear, where you came from, because I mean, I just want to exist. I just want to live. I mean, that's all. And I don't know. It was really hard for me. That I was really sad that no matter what I do, just me wanting to live freely is, I don't know, it's like feeling of living in sin. I don't know, like I don't deserve to just live. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy that you got out of it, but just, I don't know, it's really discouraging. Well, that was me, and I don't find the camera button, but Pancake, my dog, says hi also.
Hi to you and your dog. Yeah, that's the problem with this ideology, is it's so like it is your existence that is at stake. How do you reason with an ideology like that? And that's why I can't normalize it. I can't, and I also can't trick myself into thinking that, the other side is just, these are reconcilable differences. They're not.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Because these people that believe, oh, if they just had this land, oh, if you just left Gaza and gave it to them, oh, if you just, if only the checkpoints weren't like this, or if only the schools were like this, or if only the hospitals weren't like this, or if only we gave them more money, or if only. You and I know that none of this makes any kind of difference whatsoever. At the end of the day, the goal always has been and always will be eradication of Israel and every Jew living there. That's always what they've never faltered. They've never changed their mind. That's what they have been saying from the very beginning. They don't want their own state. They don't even care about having their own state. They just care that Jews don't get their own state. There's 57 Muslim majority countries. It's not that they need Palestine to exist. It's not that they need, they don't. It's what you were saying before. They're pawns. They're being used as bludgeons. They're being used basically to eradicate the Jewish state. And that's, being funded by Iran as well. Like, it's all about that. Like, they don't really. Do you think Iran needs that little piece of land? Do you think Muslims need that little piece of land? Do you think Arabs need that little? No, of course not. But they will.
I mean, Yasmine,
fight to the death. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, have you ever heard somebody from back home use the term settler colonialism?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's all for these folks over here.
Never.
Yeah.
I've
They
only
use the
ever heard it
language
from
that
Canada
they know.
and the US.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the history of Canada and the US. That's the blood-soaked history that fills them with guilt that they know is going to trigger their empathy, right? They want to get their, not cognitive empathy, but emotional empathy, right? They just want them to react. And if they give them the impression that Palestine was this beautiful Arab state where Arabs were living together, making hummus and sandcastles and everything was beautiful. And then all of a sudden, these Jews just came in from Europe and took over their homes, and they're walking around with the key to their home that these settlers came in and took over their homes. This is the story. And that is a very compelling story. And what's important too, and I think it was Courtney who mentioned Enad Wolf, who is such a great person on this topic. Mm-hmm. And she's such a great person on this topic because she's like us in that she was on the far left. And you have to be there first before you can start to recognize the madness of it all. And she was talking about how that story is so compelling because it's so simplistic. It's like, it fits beautifully in a TikTok. It's like Sesame Street level understanding. And so if you just sell this lie, you sell this packaged meme of oppressor versus oppressed, settler colonialist, indigenous people, blah, blah, blah. It's all lies, but it works. It pulls at their heartstrings and it makes them feel like, oh, wow, we did that too. We're also settler colonialists. And they're not realizing, like, how did a quarter of this planet get colonized by Muslims? Pray tell.
Right.
If you think you're fighting the colonizers, who's colonizing? Who are the colonizers here? Right?
It's funny you mentioned Enad Wolf, Yasmine, because it was actually your episode with Enad Wolf where I really found out about how horrible UNRWA was. Like, that episode that you had with Enad Wolf really exposed me to a lot, and it was really consequential for me as to how I would later formulate my opinions on things.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to have to make sure to let her know. Yeah, thank you. And for anybody listening, her book is called The War of Return, and highly recommend it. And it is very important, as you mentioned, Michael, for people to just understand the facts. And your government, my government, all of these Western governments are giving billions of dollars to support Hamas, really. Like, you have to know it's your tax dollars that paid for those tunnels. So it's really important for people to understand that. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, Michael. Thank you,
Hey,
Yasmine.
Sarah.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
I know Yasmine already mentioned, but people love you. Your vulnerability, as Katya said, your accountability, your self-awareness is amazing, and we really appreciate you. I understand how difficult it is to sit here and bear your soul out like this, and I appreciate you so much. You talked about Unveiled once. You made a video, and that's when I realized I like this man. He's a smart. I adore that book. Yasmine's book. I know we are talking about Enad Wolf's book. Yasmine, I adore that book. Unveiled has made me feel seen and sane, and it has given me a purpose, and it's given me a community. Tell me about what spoke to you when you read Unveiled. Talk about Unveiled a little bit. That's basically my question, please. Thank you.
It's the fact that there's just scenes first off, when I'm reading Unveiled, it feels so familiar that I'm able to like sort of put myself where she is in the book. And there are just scenes where it felt so familiar with me with my own upbringing. Like Yasmine would talk about her mom and how she would eat seeds and watch movies. And like, I see that with my mom, she'll have, the seeds and she'll watch her Arabic soap operas. And it's just the in a way, and I mentioned this in the video when I did the review, was it felt like I grew up in a very Muslim Coptic family, just because of how sort of Arabized we were. And the physical abuse was something that I grew up with. And so that was, I mean, I will also say that like for Yasmin, it was much more extreme, but it did make me feel sort of like, and I know that it's not an uncommon part of the culture, but it just resonated with me. It touched me. Like I felt like that's, the loving somebody who you know will never love you back the way you love them and wanting them to love you back. That is very tough. And I still have instances like that with my parents, but I've also learned to like keep a healthy distance from them. I love my parents, but I've blocked my parents quite a few times on my phone. So, I stopped caring. But, it's, it just reminded me of how important it is to have boundaries and to really stick up for who you are. Don't try to shrink yourself for anybody.
Did my book teach you that? Because it took me 20 more years to finally get that message. I'm really glad that you got that message because that really is incredibly important. And I'm so grateful that you were able to get that message from my book, but that it took me so many more years to finally really live by that. But you're absolutely correct. Have your boundaries. Do not diminish yourself. I'm so proud of you for reaching this point, for getting where you are on so many different levels. You have been through, I feel like, multiple lifetimes to get where you are today. You've been through so much. You've gone through, yeah, like you've been reincarnated about 6 times in this one life. So you have so much wisdom to share, and I hope to read your book one day because I know that so many people are going to learn from it and are going to empathize with you and what you say is going to resonate with them. And I know that you're going to help a lot of people to see through the indoctrination, to just break through the cognitive dissonance that they're in, regardless of what the cult is, regardless of what the ideology is. But I think it's really, really important in this day and age for somebody who has been so deeply embedded in the pro-Palestine issue, which is now called, Palestinianism, because it's beyond, you're not pro-Palestinians. Stop. You're not. This is an ideology, right? And I think it's really important for us to get the voices of a whistleblower who has come from that group, so deeply embedded in that group to the point that you actually converted to Islam. I think your voice is extremely important and extremely relevant right now. And, I feel like if you could just every weekend for the next few months, sit down and just get your story out as much as you possibly can. I'll help you to self-publish it. If you can't get a publisher, hopefully you can. But your story needs to be heard. There's so many people right now that are in that same dark place where you were, who are thinking that they're the good person and who are causing so much more harm than good, and they don't know it. And I think it's so important for your story to be heard, to hopefully reach those people, or at least reach their family and friends. You know what I mean? Just put some light out there in the world, and have your story be a ripple effect for spreading truth and change.
I would love to. That's something I never ever considered. So just the idea of it,
Yeah,
pretty amazing.
especially now. I feel like we need to do it now. Like things are really bad in the world, and somehow they're only getting worse. So, yeah, I think that would be really, really valuable to contribute to the planet at this point. really healing for everyone. But thank you so much, Michael. And before I let you go, I want to make sure that you've said everything that you wanted to say, that you don't have any parting words of wisdom for us. Maybe you can let people know where they can follow you, although we will be posting that in the description. But a lot of people just listen to this podcast. And so if you could just, tell people where they can find you or how they can support you, or just any parting words of wisdom that you have for us before we conclude.
Well, Coptic Kapara 0548, that's my IG, that's my Instagram. That's where I do the bulk of my content. I don't really have any parting words of wisdom. I have two things to say that I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't say it. Number one is bring them home now. We all want the hostages to come home. And something that I need to do for the Coptic community is there was recently a Coptic girl by the name of Demiana from the city of Minya who was abducted and forcibly converted to Islam. And we need her to come back home too. They are protesting outside the Egyptian embassy in Greece right now because they can't protest, obviously, in Egypt. So what Coptic women are going through in Egypt, it's a nightmare, especially in Upper Egypt. And I mean, you know what? I have to broaden this. It's not just Coptic women; it's Egyptian women in general. 80 to 90% of Egyptian women suffer from female genital mutilation. It is an absolute crime against Egyptian women. Just please keep these people in your thoughts, and if you see something about that, please share it, because there's not enough of us to share it.
Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate you bringing in the topic of women. That's close to my heart, and you're absolutely correct. And even beyond Egypt, Hindu and Sikh and Christian girls in Pakistan, like, this is what they do, right? So, thank you so much for bringing attention to those important causes. And it's important for people to start to recognize the patterns of behavior, the threads of connection, because people like to look at these things as isolated cases. And you and I both know that these all have one root, and it's not isolated. Yes. And it all comes from a religion that tells them that non-Muslim women are things to be used, essentially. That's the whole point of the hijab. So you can know the difference between who you can rape and who you can't. Right. And that's why Israeli girls and women were treated the way they were on October 7th, was because they were taught that now that you've created this, they've created this thing of, like, we're resistance fighters and we're in a war. So that means that you can take these women and do what you want with them. And that's considered perfectly legal within Islam. That's why the ISIS fighters were...
They want to fight like it's the 7th century, but then when they get their asses kicked, they want the convenience of the Geneva Conventions.
Yeah. Man, I need to have you on for another 2 hours. You are amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. And just keep going, Michael. I see you everywhere. I see you're going on the podcast circuits, and I'm seeing your face and I'm hearing your voice, and I could not possibly be more proud of you. You're so amazing.
I'm so proud of you, Yasmine. You're a hero. Seriously. Like, when I got the invitation, I couldn't believe it. You're such an inspiration for me. You're a hero. Reading your book was like reading almost in a way, like sort of like reading my own life story. I really admire you, and thank you. This was an honor to do so. Thank you so much, Yasmine.
The love is absolutely mutual. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Okay.
Bye. After hearing all that, you might be left wondering, what can I do? How can I help? Well, this is why I created a nonprofit called Free Hearts, Free Minds. We are the only organization dedicated exclusively to helping these free thinkers. We empower them with our programs and supportive community, lifting them up so they can heal, speak out, and begin to make positive changes, not just in their own lives, but within the broader community around them. If this is a cause that resonates with you and you want to make a difference, one way to do that is by donating to Free Hearts, Free Minds. Because not enough people care about this cause, we need people like you to help fuel this change. You can donate via our website, freeheartsfreeminds.com. Thank you. Every dollar you donate makes a difference.